It's the Political Free Agents podcast, and we're back for our Wednesday episode. We are dealing with trying to balance the show with life, and it's a busy time for myself, Chris, and Mike. Um, it it just seems to never stop, in terms of everything we have going on, which is a good thing. We're definitely grateful for where we are. We don't take it for granted in terms of uh, having work, having things to do. So we don't take that for granted at all. We really do look at it as a blessing, And sometimes we just in our conversations, we're just unsure how to handle some of the stuff. Like some of the stuff is just new. And so existing in this environment and where we have tens of millions of people that are out of work and we're finding an abundance of work, sometimes it can start feeling a little bit like where we're getting something extra, that altruism in us kind of kicks in, and it starts to if we don't watch it, it's a little guilty. It can kind of get that way. But we do look at it as the blessing that it is in order to um, have work right now and to be able to be productive and be able to help others in this time. So, along those lines, this episode is all, well, not all, it's going to partially be about a conversation I was having with someone on Twitter. And not necessarily just about that specific conversation, but there's an over, let's just say there's an overt case uh, built, quote unquote, against billionaires to the point of where people feel like billionaires owe them something. And so we're going to dive into that a little bit because it's just a little bit hypocritical uh, in my eyes, because the things that people want billionaires to do, they're not doing. And also, along those lines, we have the DNC has kicked off their convention. So the DNC convention is live, and people are speaking, and things are happening, and not watching. I've never really been interested in those, but there is one point we want to look at there. And if Chris gets time to join, he will be able to join. Mike is definitely out, but Chris may be able to make it in order to uh, bless us with his presence a little bit. All right. So the one thing I want to talk about with the DNC convention, it's remote, virtual, that sort of thing. Well, I guess there's a couple things. Uh, AOC, she spoke. I'm not going to play her speech, but it will be in the show notes. She spoke a quick 60-second speech, and at the end, she endorsed Bernie Sanders. And my first thought was they they shouldn't have been surprised, right? Like they shouldn't have been surprised that she would endorse Bernie. Like, why would anyone be surprised about that? On the other hand, I think people look at that as something abnormal. And I can understand because if you don't know how conventions used to run, then the conventions now, you think that's abnormal. But quick history without going into, a long, detailed historical list here. Um, the conventions actually used to be where they would come and actually start to like pick the vice presidential candidate. Like there wasn't the I picked my candidate and I'm going to present them at the convention. That wasn't the case. What they would do though is go to the convention and they would actually like fight it out, like I want this person, I want that person. That's the concept of like the delegates. Think of it as, from the Democratic side, you have, let's say, 4 different groups. And those 4 groups have a certain amount of delegates that they can basically apply to a candidate. Those delegates are lobbied by specific people. So if I'm running for president, I go to group 1 and I'm like, hey, look, I'm your guy. I'm telling you, I can do this, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, you know what? Yeah, you got our delegates. I go to 2, I go to 3, and then I go to 4, and I try to get delegates, right? And they hand me delegates, and then you have a break, and then you come back, and you get more delegates, and people change, and they flip flop, and it was quote unquote madness. There's a portion of that. We saw some of that play out a little bit in 2016. I believe it was on the Republican side with some of the delegate switching and stuff like that, but it's not nearly what it was back in the day. Back in the day, you could get literal fights happening. And so it was, you imagine, think about today's climate, how politically charged it is. And now imagine having to have these political debates with the people that don't really seemingly like each other, pick one person to fill one position based on delegates that they have. So it was a little rough and rowdy, right? So that's kind of where it comes from. And so by people standing up and saying, our delegates go to this candidate, it wasn't abnormal, you know, for that stuff to happen. So it really wasn't abnormal for AOC to do it. But in today's political climate, the idea is, if you are not a Trumper, then you're a never Trumper, right? It's black and white. There's no in between. It's like Trump or whoever we put on the ticket, right? Vote blue no matter who, right? Is kind of what it is. And then same thing, whatever their slogan is on the red side. So because of that, people expect, or maybe it's just me, I don't know. You tell me. Did you feel the same? Did you expect everybody to fall in line and just be like, I support Biden, I support Biden, I support Biden? I didn't, you know, I didn't get really shocked that AOC did it. But I guess there was a little bit of a tinge of me kind of expecting the presentation of everybody to be pro Biden, right? And so it was interesting. The flip side of that is Trump and his team, they have ramped up their posts, their emails, because I still get Trump's emails, and they are coming in hot and heavy and fast, and they are noisy every single night, trying to break through the messaging that was coming out of the DNC convention, and largely it's expected. I expect the Democrats to do the same thing at the RNC convention. I fully expect it. It's a little weird for me because I don't like lying, and so a lot of the political spectrum now is, I'm going to come out, I'm just going to lie about something, or I'm going to present the kind of, Trump is really good at this, quote unquote. And in this case, good means bad. But he's really good at this in that he'll float something just to kind of get it out there. And then the media and the right or the left, they eat it up. So like the right starts sharing it and going on about it, and then the left starts fighting against it. And now all the while, you're paying attention to what this one thing did and not paying attention to the other, right? You're listening to these words, but not paying attention to all the actions that are actually happening behind the scenes. So it's like, I just wish the media would come out one day and they would just put on the chyron at the bottom of the screen, President Trump says something stupid on Twitter, and just move on. Don't even mention it. Don't even talk about it. Don't go on. Just put him in an echo chamber of talking to only conservative media and just let it go. Move on. That's it. Just let him speak into the ether and don't even focus on it. Because by giving him that fuel, the fire just burns brighter and brighter and brighter. And it's like, I know you guys have to see the pattern. I mean, humans are pattern recognition systems. You have to see the patterns. But anyway, the DNC convention is going on. Yeah, I've heard some people say that some parts have been very moving, touching. They really enjoyed it, but I just never really had a real taste for it. It just seems like a bunch of backslapping. And ultimately, what comes of these presidential elections is somebody that's going to make minor to moderate improvements, and they're going to do moderate to major, wrongs. They're going to bomb people. They're going to kill people. They're going to, neglect this or that. I mean, it's not going to necessarily move the needle forward in a full way, because you end up with this opposition in Congress and people aren't working together, and all they're doing is wasting our time. Hence why political free agents exist as a thing, because we all kind of saw that this two-party system is jagged, man. Like they play us against each other as teams, like we're on our team, so you have to hate that team. All the while, congressmen and women are going to lunch together and enjoying time and blah, blah, blah. But on TV, they're calling each other out and all this stuff. So it's a big mess. I think we have to stop looking towards government for solutions. I keep saying it and keep pushing the idea that government isn't the solution to our problem. We need government to largely get out the way, to be honest. All right, so I want to transition to talking about this whole concept about these billionaires. So it's largely natural. If you, let's say you have $10,000 in debt, and I don't know, you're struggling to pay it. At the end of the month, you have, $50 left, and with all your bills, your debt, everything piled up, you're just struggling. But you have a friend, and your friend, has $1 million cash sitting in the bank account. It's, I believe it's almost a natural thing to feel um, like that 10,000, you wouldn't even see it. You probably make that an interest this year or something, can you help a brother out? Right? That's almost a natural feeling, even if you don't act on it, even if you squelch it, at a minimum, maybe not necessarily say a feeling, a thought. At a minimum, the thought can cross your mind. And that's cool. Like, whatever you and your friend works out, it is what it is, right? I think the problem comes in, and this is what happens with the billionaire concept, is when you see struggle and you see lack and you say, hey, friend, speaking of a friend with $1 million, you you have to give me that 10,000, or you're evil, or you have to give some random people. I'm good, but I think you should give $10,000 to this person who is struggling, because you know what, they can't pay their bills, and you could pay their bills for 5 years with just one deposit, right? You could take care of their life and improve their life right now if you just give them something. And if you don't, you're evil. And so the idea that all billionaires are evil, I just fundamentally have a problem with it. Because at what point, is it that somebody is evil for not taking what they have and giving it to somebody else? At what point? And what is the requirement, like the percentage, the number that is required for them to give before they're not considered an evil person, right? So we've seen this game play out quite a bit, right? Like, from the political spectrum, we could take say Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders used to say a much lower number in terms of who were the rich and the wealthy that needed to pay more. Bernie Sanders became a millionaire, and that number went up just a little bit, right? I think Bernie ended up being worth about 2 million, in terms of what he had made. I think it was from like books and his heightened presence in the culture, I guess you could say. All of a sudden, that millionaires and billionaires kind of crept up to like 10 million. Anything over 10 million is a wash. Well, okay. Well, why don't we bring that down, and why don't we say it's 1 million? If you make over $1 million, you have to give all the rest to somebody else. Why not? Well, let's bring it down even more, because living in America doesn't take $500,000 a year. It doesn't. So let's say anything over 500,000 that you make, you have to give that away, because that's all excess. Because off of 500,000, you can live very comfortably in a $3,000, a month mortgage, depending on where you live. Yeah, I guess. Because if it's California, 3,000 gets you a 2-bedroom apartment. So, certain parts, obviously, so other parts are fine. But so, how do we gauge that, right? Like, what's the stopping point? What's the floor for excess? And who determines what excess is? And who says how much altruism has to be exerted before you are no longer considered evil? So let's take just the big numbers, right? And I like this example because this example is one of my favorite examples, because it's kind of who I would be if I was a billionaire. And I'll give a very specific example how I know that. So let's take the Chobani CEO. We mentioned him before. His name is Hamdi Ulukaya, and I could be pronouncing that wrong. My apologies, Hamdi, if I am. I will refer to him as Hamdi from here on out. So Hamdi is the Chobani CEO, and he did something that was very odd. They called it rare. Kind of one of those moments where people are like, "Oh my God, that's different." And what he did was he actually gave 2,000 full-time employees ownership stake in the company. This was back in 2016. I'll have a link in the show notes. You can look up other links. There's plenty of information about it because it was a big deal. And so basically the company built up to be a pretty big brand. I think they built up to, before they went public, they said, about $3 billion to $5 billion in 2014. That was the valuation. So it grew to be a pretty big deal, right? And so the Time or Time magazine, they estimated that the employees could be giving shares worth an average of 150,000, while long-time employees could be given shares worth more than $1 million. Okay, and this is full-time employees. I don't mean like CEO or C-level people, the CEO, the CFO, the CTO, all these sort of people. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about like blue collar shirt. Literally, there's a picture of a guy in a blue collar shirt that says Chobani and Jeff on the side. And it looks like he's probably in maintenance or something like that. He owns stake in Chobani now, right? And so an amazing thing. Like, I don't see anybody who would say he was wrong for doing that, but it was his choice to do that. And he made it, right? So Hamdi is one of the people that I use as an example, because if you try to say all billionaires are evil, I'm going to pull up Hamdi, and he wouldn't be the only one. So Hamdi did this thing, but Hamdi is still worth, or his net worth is about $2 billion. So if Hamdi's net worth is about 2 billion, his liquid will be somewhere less than that. Just so you know, if you're not familiar, net worth refers to all your assets and everything else. Liquid is, let's just say, like cash in the bank sort of thing, money you can get your hands on. So somebody worth $2 billion doesn't exactly have $2 billion sitting in a bank account. Their net worth is different than their actual liquid worth, their liquidity. The same goes for Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is what I think is like 116 billion was his net worth. But if you end up taking away his, assets and everything, his liquid is, I don't know, still some ridiculously high number of billions, but it's not the same as 116. So, that's a slight difference, but still, let's just say liquid. And I didn't look up his liquidity value, but let's say he's liquid 500 million, half a billion, right? I mean, that's a lot of money. But why do you deserve any of it? What is it about you or anybody else in this country or in this world that deserves anything that he owns? And I know the idea is, well, they can, so they should. Okay, so let's bring it down. Let's bring it back. You owe, or let's say you work, your bills cost you, let's say $2,000 a month. Everything, rent, all your expenses, all your debt, everything is covered by $2,000 a month. You make $4,000 a month. You have $2,000 left over. Why don't you give 1,500 of that away? Why don't you give 1,000, 500, just to anybody, somebody that's struggling, that just needs money? Why aren't you giving your excess away? And so this was the conversation that I was having on Twitter. There was a tweet that I initially responded to, and somebody finally came in later and started responding to it. And the tweet was from Van Latham. He said, "Name a good billionaire, like a good guy / lady." Killer Mike responded, said, "Sean Carter and Tony Ressler, both been 100 with me and good within my dealings with them and my community." So then the first comment comes down and they say, "Why don't they fix the issues in Flint?" Real question. I know they buy companies and employ folks, and that's great. We'll touch on that in a second. Is there something that stops them from doing things like paying to fix pipes in Flint? Am I misunderstanding what's possible when you have that much money? Right. So again, they're looking at that much money as liquid. Doesn't necessarily mean liquid. Jay-Z may not be liquid $1 billion. He may be liquid 700, 200 million. We don't know. Well, somebody may know. I don't know. But, the idea is they're a billionaire. They should use all that money going forward. But whoever this is, I don't know, says she, her in her description, admits that they recognize that they buy companies, which gives and keeps and potentially increases the number of people that are working there, invest in communities, those sort of things. They employ folks, which there's no better way to get somebody out of poverty than giving them a job. You can give them money all you want, but if you just give them the cash, there's a difference between earning it and the people that earn it, they feel differently about it. You can look at lotto, things like that. I'm just speaking from people that I talk to, people that I know, that I've seen that have come up out of poverty and things like that. When they earn it, they feel different than if somebody just hands it to them. And I know there are people who would just love to just take that and run with it, but I also know people who are poor who wouldn't take it. They would rather work for it, right? So not casting or throwing any shade on anybody, how they feel about it. But my response to this was, one, it's not their job to fix Flint. Like it's not. A situation caused by government that can be fixed by government, should be fixed by government, is not the responsibility of some random person who you think has too much money. I have $1 billion, so I should be paying for Flint. What? Like, how does that even work? Because if that's the case, you with your $2,000 left over should be sending $1,000 every single month or $1,500 every single month because you have excess. So you should be sending that to try to fix the pipes. And yeah, it'll take you a little while, but let's just say we span that across America and everybody with $2,000 left over has to give $1,500. Is it, well, is that okay? Can we do that? Do you see yourself as evil because you haven't given a dime to Flint to fix their water? This is the way I kind of break this stuff down, because if you look at it on that grand scale and you're like, man, yeah, you got 200 million in the bank account, man, you could peel off, 50 million. You still have 150. But why? Why is it their responsibility to fix the incompetence of government? The government in Flint tried to be cheap, and they tried to use cheap parts, and they tried to save money, and they lined pockets of people that didn't deserve it. But it's the billionaires' responsibility to fix that. Help it make sense. Help it make sense for me. My number two, they can't just go in and fix structures like that. Like me as a private citizen, camera got blurry on me. All right, here we go. They can't just go in and say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna fix these pipes. I got a guy, he can fix these pipes. What? They can't. Like, they can't just go in. And of course, they can go work with city officials and try to get some things going and that sort of thing. But what is it going to boil down to? It's going to boil down to city budget. Of course, they can make a donation to the city. They can do some certain things like that to try to fix it if they want to. And that's the key, if they want to. My third point, it isn't a budget issue. It wasn't about the budget. They were just being cheap. That's what it boiled down to. So the conversation after that and replies after that kind of started coming in. And I'm not going to go down all these because it doesn't matter. But what I was trying to express to this other person who came in and started responding, they basically stated that it was entirely an issue that can be solved by billionaires. And again, can be, yes, things can be solved by billionaires. They're just not required to. They're welcome to. Feel free. Feel free to come in there and solve it. But they're not required to solve it. And so the idea that I look at your pockets and I say, because I can Google you and I can see how much money you have, I look at your pockets and say, you know what?
This is the
you
top
need
result.
to do more. And not talking to you, Google. You need to do more. And that's just weird to me, because number one, you don't know everything that they're doing, right? You can look at Bezos and you can say he should pay more, and he stepped on the backs of other people, and he destroyed industry, and you can come up with everything that you want. But me as a business owner, I make more money than all of my employees. I just do. But I also employ people that I didn't necessarily have to employ. But that's why I say I know I would be like Hamdi, the CEO of Chobani, because during the COVID crisis, I just found work for people and started paying people. I didn't have to do it. I didn't necessarily need it. It wasn't required of me. But I saw myself with excess and I decided I wanted to do it. But there would be nothing wrong with me telling them, done with work, uh, I'm gonna go ahead and let you go. And then me putting that profit into the business and doing whatever I wanted, excuse me, whatever I wanted to do with it. There will be nothing wrong with it at all. And none of my excess is yours. You didn't work for it. I didn't negatively exploit anybody for it. I did whatever I could do to make as much as I could make. And that excess, I decided to start employing some people and helping them. So me pulling back and saying, no, I'm done doing that, that wouldn't be up to you either, right? So get it out of your mind, the numbers. Don't think about the numbers. Don't think about X number of dollars that this CEO has that you feel is excess. You just don't know. I try to tell my kids all the time, a millionaire can be broke. You don't know. They could have any sort of excess spending or anything. You can look at, I mean, there's countless stories. Allen Iverson got put on when he went to the NBA, and he came from, being broke, and he brought his crew and he had an entourage, all of them, peeling off money to all of them. Random stuff. Hey man, you security. Hey man, you this. Hey, you this. You taking care of this. You taking care of that. Taking care of flights, paying them, feeding them, all of that sort of stuff. Allen ended up broke. Broke, quote unquote, to an extent. But he was overextended. And so you may see $1 million in a year, but if your bills are let's say $990,000, you have $10,000 left over, or let's say 988 for simple math. That means at the end of every single month, you have $1,000 left over. I mean, you're not rich. You have a high salary, but you're not rich and you're not wealthy. So there's a difference in looking at numbers and assuming you know what somebody has available to them, and also looking at numbers and realizing the numbers don't necessarily mean wealth. In the cases of those massive wealth CEOs like Bezos and those sort of guys, sure. If you have $50 billion liquid or whatever Bezos has, I'm pretty sure he has some excess in that. But we're not entitled to any of it. Any of it. We're just not. It's not their responsibility to fix our country. It's not. They didn't really create the problem either. It just didn't. It's not them. What you need to do is stop writing for party, stop writing for team, stop looking at other people, looking at their bank accounts, looking at their checkbooks, and you need to just focus on what you can do. What impact can you have? Where are you giving your money? Right? That's the big deal. What are you doing? Don't worry about them. What are you doing? What opportunities are you creating for other people to get out of poverty, or Flint, fix the pipes? What are you doing? If that's important to you, what are you doing besides tweeting? And it's okay to talk and ask questions. That's fine. But I'm not excoriating the person who posted the initial tweet. I'm just saying, before you start looking at other people's pockets, open up yours and tell everybody else exactly how much you're spending, what your net worth is, what your liquid worth is, and the percentage that you're giving in excess. Because I'm going to then look at it and I'm going to tell you, oh, you know what? You need to sell that extra car you have, or just give it away. Keep paying for it, but give it to somebody else. Why not? Your grocery budget is $500 a month. I think it should be $400. Give the extra $100 to somebody else. What? You mean I can't step into your budget and make you eat less a month? I can't. Oh, okay. You don't know who these billionaires are supporting. You probably don't even know what donations they give every year. You probably don't. Speaking of Bernie Sanders, uh, I think in one of his last financial disclosures, he gave less than, I think, 3% or something like that of his money away. But even then, that's what's on record, right? So on record, what he filed in terms of taxes was about 3% or whatever it was. I don't know, 5%. It was less than 10 that he actually gave to people, charitable donations, things like that. But you don't know who Bernie's helping. You don't know whose rent he's paying. Some random family member that he's paying all their monthly bills or sending them money every single month or what. You just don't know, right? You're not in that, so you don't know. So let's just stop with the all billionaires are evil and they are required to give their money back to somebody else. They're not. They're simply not. This is the system. You should exploit the system in whatever way you can to make as much money as you can without, disenfranchising other people. Do it on the up and up, make as much money as you can, and then give as much of it as away as you feel is necessary. But don't tell somebody else they have to. That's just not the way any of this works. It's just how I feel. All right, so this is it's been an interesting day. I'm not going to uh, go on and on for the full hour today because I do have some other things I have to jump to. But I did want to get on and at least express that, I guess, get it off my chest a little bit and just kind of woosah because, I don't follow that line of thinking. I've never been one to require somebody else to do something that for me or for mine or for other people is not my responsibility. It's not their responsibility. I don't know you anything and you don't know me anything. I'm in charge of my family. You're in charge of your family. Is what it is. Everything after that is gravy. Now, I'm all for altruism. Help people as much as you can. Do whatever you can to, you know, help people come up out of their position. But just handing money is not always the solution. And let's stop giving the government a pass. When you look at billionaires to fix a problem that the government created, you're just letting them off the hook. Man, they just they just cut checks for what, 2-something billion, 3 billion. They're looking at cutting another billion trillion in a year, in less than 6 months. You telling me they can't find a way to do the exact same thing to fix homelessness, to fix the Flint pipes, every single thing that's going on in this country. You telling me that they can't fix those things that you say money will solve? I'm just saying, give those billionaires an incentive. Give them something, tax write-off, whatever. I don't care what it is. Give them something, but you do not confiscate their wealth. Bernie actually had a bill that he was presenting to confiscate their wealth and take a large portion of their wealth. There was, I think, Elon Musk, I think, would end up having to cut a check for like $100 million. That's ludicrous to me. It's ludicrous when we look at all the wasteful spending that the government is doing right now, not just in COVID, just in general, all the wasted spending that's happening. And you want to go to American people and tell them you are evil because you made too much money. Because I assume you stepped on people and I assume you're paying people less than what they're worth. It's a system. I tell my kids all the time, learn the rules and then play by them and play them to the fullest abilities that you can. It's a system. There are rules. Beat it. That's all it boils down to. Beat the system. Then after that, you can have real wealth and then you can have real freedom. It's as simple as that. Anyway, I'm not going to keep going on and on. We are the political free agents. We do this thing every Wednesday, 7 p.m. and Sundays at 2 p.m. When life doesn't get in the way. I'm gonna start adding that asterisk, that little caveat at the bottom. When life doesn't get in the way, that's when we do the episodes. uh, Hit us up, politicalfreeagents.com. You can check us out. The live streams are there. There's a link at the top for live. And you can also check out past episodes. Also, go to the YouTube channel, click subscribe, click like. The more, the like and subscribe actually gets you notified much faster. We do it live on YouTube every week. You can also listen to the live audio if you don't want to do the live video. And it's all on politicalfreeagents.com. Hit us up on social media at PFA Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And we're available everywhere podcasts are available. Rate us, review us, let us know what you think. Hit us up in the comments, and we'll catch you on the next episode. We out.